Hello there, friends, and welcome back to another episode of Football Manager Therapy. Here I am with my close personal friend from the internet, D-Boy Plays. Dan, are you all right, mate? Are you well?
I'm really good, thanks, man. How are you getting on today?
I'm doing very, very well. We're back again. It's just us two.
I wish there were more.
I wish there was more of us. Oh, no, I've done it again. I've said just us two. As we established last week, there is no just us two. We contain multitudes. We are very interesting people. But thanks to you, Dan, it isn't actually just us two. Because if I press this little button here on my computer, you never guess what's going to happen. Oh, we're joined by the mad scientist and MrTini!
Hey!
Hello, fellas.
God bless the internet.
Oh, isn't it wonderful? Isn't it wonderful? We've got returning guest, the mad scientist. And we've got brand new guest on the podcast, MrTini. Teeny, hello, friend. Welcome to FMT. How are we?
Yeah, pretty good, mate. Yourself?
Oh, mate, I'm excited. I'm
I know.
raring to go. Guests, two of them at the same time. What are we? A successful and competent podcast? Yeah. I think
Oh, we know we are. Yeah.
yeah. For the audio listeners, Dee nodded through the entirety of that segment because he's in agreement. Yeah, with the absolute best, the best to ever do it. And of course, we have the returning, one of the all-time podcast goats, one of the all-time podcast live show attendee goats. It's the mad scientist, Mad. How are you, my friend?
I'm all right, thank you, Rich, and thank you for having me. I've been a long-time listener of this podcast, so it's a huge pleasure and honor to be back. Appreciate it.
It's lovely to have you back. I mean, realistically speaking, we should just take a second to give Dee his flowers here because Dee has arranged the whole thing. So, thank you for this. It feels like it's a treat for me as much as it is for everybody else.
It's a treat for me as well. I was lucky enough to hang out with both of these chaps last summer on our little trip to Denmark. I'm wearing a Denmark shirt because I should. We're joined by Homie as well.
Yes.
Mad's dog. This is the first thing I was gonna ask you, Mad, is how is Homie? And how's the lawn holding up?
Homie's fine, lawn isn't.
The lawn definitely isn't after we left.
There's no way back. No way back.
No, he's burrowing his way to China.
A little destroyer.
Yeah.
What was that gardening product? Evergreen. You need some of that.
Absolutely.
Oh.
And the dog's gone. Podcast is over. Good night, everybody.
Yeah, that's it.
That's it. It's done now.
He's used to getting a treat when I'm live streaming, so I know what he think he's getting.
I
He's just waiting to hear the where the dog yet? Regime.
See, this is it. So he sees you in your chair, headset on, talking away to people, and automatically feed me.
I can sit here and edit for hours. The second I start talking into the microphone, he jumps up to my lap and tail goes like this. He knows what's up.
Smart boy.
Spoiled. He's spoiled.
Mm-hmm. Well, if anyone's going to visit Mad in Denmark, if you just jump onto his lap and start wagging your tail, he will feed you.
Note, Ash, write that down, Teeny. We'll remember that for
write that down.
Yeah, notes for the next visit. So I want to know, but before we start talking about the good stuff, because it's all good stuff, what have you done to Mad's lawn? I need context. Sometimes context slows these things down, but no, right now I demand context as to why you visited Mad and then destroyed his garden.
We can't take the credit for the destruction entirely of the garden. I mean, there was already a little bit of destruction going on when we got there. Because Homie, he's digging a lot of holes, right? So many holes.
Amazing, no one broke an ankle while you were here.
It is a death trap, that lawn.
It's like a minefield.
Yeah. But, Teeny, we wanted to buy a football before we visited. And, go on, Teeny. You share what we did.
So we walk into the shop. We're looking for a regular size ball. Off to our right, there's a huge, and I mean, it's about 3 times the size of the dog. It's like, it's got to be that ball.
Yeah.
And it took me about 20 minutes to rip it up, all the leather off the ball, all around the garden.
It was like a little winter wonderland. There was snow everywhere.
Yeah.
It was great. He was really happy with it.
Well, I want to know, is the ball still alive?
And the ball is still alive. You only ate the outside, the
wow.
leather part of the ball. The ball is still alive. I'll get it next time you're around.
Because there was a lot of dead balls in the garden when we arrived.
It took me like 1.5 hours to clean up the garden, but we loved it. We loved it.
Okay, that helps.
Sorry, mate.
No, that helps me. That's painted a more accurate picture of the events, you know. Because when you said you bought him a ball and Homie just destroyed it, I was like, did he just not like the ball? Was it
He
like
destroys everything.
we've bought you a Jabulani, Homie, and he's like, I can't hit my free kicks with this. Who do I look like? Diego Forlan, and he's just taken the outer layer off. It's like straight and true now. He's a lot happier. He's a lot happier. No, that's good.
Doesn't like the swerve.
Hates the swerve. He can't figure it out. A lot of other players can well, Diego Forlan did, and he was about the only one. Diego Forlan, but Homie could have done. I think he has the potential. He looks like a deadly free kick taker. Well, there you go. So that you went to visit Mad and you bought a very destroyable ball and you've ruined his back garden. There you go.
Essentially, yeah.
That's
Had a
why.
lovely time.
Yeah. Apart from that, I had a great time. That's why channel point redeem on my streams means I have to come to your house to do jokes because by the sounds of things, I don't want anybody ever coming to mine. I've only got a small back garden.
You don't know how close I am, Rich. You don't know how close I am.
Sounds like a threat. But one I'm quite into. That sounds cracking. For those of you who are listening or watching this podcast, by the way, who don't know who the Mad Scientist and Mr. Teeny are, one of my favourite things on Football Manager every single year are the custom databases that people make. I love retro Football Manager. It's been discussed at length on this podcast before and on my streams before. The biggest advocate of that, or is advocate really the right word? I feel enabler. I think enabler is a lot more accurate. If you've played a retro Football Manager database, especially over the last couple of game cycles, there is a very, very strong possibility that you've played a database that has been worked on by both the Mad Scientist and now Mr. Teeny, linking up, becoming one. I mean, Mad, I think last time we had you on, it was in the Me and Tony days of the podcast. I think you were the world's busiest human being, I think, for the first, 5 or 6 months of every FM game cycle, just head down, 12, 13-hour days, ploughing all of your time into these databases. You've now got Mr. Teeny working alongside you on a lot of things. How is that does that change the dynamic of how you approach these databases? I mean, talk us through going from just being a one-man show to, having people around you to support. How's that kind of worked? And how have you found that, Teeny, kind of coming in and working alongside Mad?
You take it first, Teeny.
I was going to say, it's an honour for me, because as you say, he is the GOAT. Mm-hmm. So just being able to, look at him now. Yeah, it's just being able to work alongside someone who I've looked up to for a while is quite an honour. So the main thing for us is though creating the content that we can, because obviously, especially with the cancellation of the game as well, is keeping the game alive at the moment. So that's our main thing. But being able to work with him is actually just a massive honour. I can't understate that, to be perfectly honest with you.
That's very kind to say, mate, and likewise. And I think that the biggest difference is actually I'm still doing the same that I've done always. I'm still doing the same editing thing, but Teeny's strength, he's coming in with another strength. He is like a genius, a magician with the advanced rules on the pre-game editor. Mm-hmm. So he's coming in with his strength. I'm bringing my strength, and together we can build a database that is more precise, more realistic than any I've ever done.
Leaves the hard bit to me.
Exactly.
a lot of swearing.
Yeah. Mad's just crunching numbers and just entering data, and you're like, I've got to try and work out how to set the finances of 95 against what we've got now and deal with all that nonsense. Yeah, the fun bit, the busy bit. Yeah. But you're working together. This is your third database now, right? For FM24, the 86, 87, and obviously, Tina, you're doing 17, 18.
Yeah.
First of all, how are both of those going so far? I think is a fun thing to find out. How far through are you with what you're planning on releasing? How near are we to seeing said things?
In terms of 17, 18, I'm hoping for a release in April.
Fun.
It's very, very close. I'm just getting to the stage now where I do it differently to Mad. I work in the old editor and then with code bring it across. So I'm not actually editing it in FM24 editor. It's all in FM18 editor.
Right.
So I'm now at the stage where it's all in the FM18 editor. I just need to now move it across. So all being well, it should be April, but obviously depends if everything goes well.
Fun. You mad? How are we getting on?
Yeah. For my personally, it's my third database project this year. First 0708, which I spent like 5 months on, coming up to the release of FM24. Then the 94-95 database, which I made with MrTini, and now the 1986 database is in the making. So, yeah, it's a special game cycle. FM24. It's as an editor, as a modder, like me and Tini, it's just been non-stop editing because there's nothing else to do. We're waiting for a new game, just like everyone else. So a new database project is just what keeps me going because it's a passion. It's an obsession. I'm editing anyway, so why not try to build another database for FM24? And the 8687 is like still in the early phase. It's actually still too early to say when it will be ready for release, but it will be out for FM24, definitely.
Yeah, it's a wild the amount of work you do, the amount of editing. My God.
It is bonkers. I mean, you've touched upon it there, Mad. I think how soon after we saw those announcements, because it still feels quite fresh in my head. You know, we finally got the update from SI that FM25 was on permanent hiatus, shall we say? After that cancellation news broke, how soon after that happened we were like, right, database number 3, here we go.
Yeah, because with the first delay, actually, with the first long delay of FM25, I spoke with MrTini about should we do another retro database for FM24? Yeah, why not? Let's do the 94-95 database. We have enough time on our hands. And then when we learned about the cancellation, we start to talk again. What project are you working on? Am I starting on something completely new again? So it was quite immediately, I think, after.
Which is fair enough. I mean, it's very on brand for you to get cracking straight away. I mean, three databases in one game cycle. Well, 2 is a heroic effort from everybody involved anyway. And just to crack your knuckles and go, right, here we go again. Database number 3. Just shows the love of the game, the love of the database creating game. It's quite incredible. And there's I think that one of the things that I've noticed is that is the reach that they have, because people love the retro databases, but just how much more in depth they're becoming as well. Because, you know, I think it's since you've been working alongside MrTini, we've started to see the regen mods coming through, and that just adds such a different dynamic to the way that people approach those saves. I think it adds, because from my perspective, I think it adds more to them. Like, Tini, where does that even begin, creating a mod which accurately creates regens as they were coming through? That's baffling to me.
It was Brainchild came about during lockdown, actually, because I was working at Tranmere and I got let go just before COVID, and I was like, I've got nothing to do. What can I do? Did a bit of research and found out, there's a way to add regens in. So what if I take the old databases, find all the players' details, and then put them in that way? And then it just came out from there. It took a year to build the initial, because they're all in an Excel spreadsheet now. It took a year to build the initial, I think it's 118,000 players at the moment. So it took obviously a year to do that. And then for every single database, I have to edit the years and things like that. So obviously to make the dates match. I'm actually changing the way it's going to work. That's my laptop's to the right. it's just doing it now. Rather than coming in via youth intakes, they're going to be future transfers instead. So when you start the game, you'll be able to see exactly who's coming through for whichever team you want to manage.
Wow.
But the main reason behind that is I can now map faces to them as well. Because I've found during obviously the work I do is a lot of people are struggling with putting faces to the players, because obviously with youth intakes you can't map the ID number to them because it changes. So that's taken a lot of time, having to basically rework the entire thing. That's about 3 or 4 months of work, and it's 50,000 in at the moment, as I was saying to Dan before we came on air. It's just a lot of editing.
Yeah. It's so, again, I mean, it's been said 1,000 times, but it's worth saying again. Thank you, what both of you do. Like, this amount of effort that you put into bringing in, just the amount of, obviously taking us back to eras, like Rich and I have both played the databases that have already come out this year. And the fact that they just kind of scratch that nostalgia itch, right? We get to sit there. And I think the last time you were on, TJ was going on about how he just sat for 6 hours just looking at players. And you just sit and look at players' names, right? And it does that as well. But I also there's something I found recently as well. A lot of younger people getting into them, because it kind of, in a way, like, especially the further back some of them are, they kind of just like educate people on the players that existed in that time. So in some way, you're not just the mad scientist, you're also a professor. So rebrand. Something to think about. Something to think about.
Yeah,
absolutely. But yeah, to add to what Mr. Tini said as well, and you spoke on, Rich, the regen mod, working with my retro databases, it gives a reason to prolong your saves. Your saves can get long term because the universe just keep expanding for years, and so it's a game changer, absolute game changer.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely, 100%, because it just gives that longevity, and I think that's for some people, and I think that's the way that I approach a retro save compared to the updated database, is that with a retro save, they feel a little bit more finite than your up-to-date database, because when I've just finished my long-term save, I did 15 seasons in total. By the end of it, it's all new gen players, and you think, oh, that's fine, because that's the purpose. You want to create those stories, you want to create those characters in your save, and that's really, really fun. But when you're managing in the retro database, after X amount of years, when your favourite players have started to retire, the ones that are in there that are clinging on for dear life because they've probably only got a couple of seasons left in them, the likes of a Diego Maradona in the most recent database, like, let's have Maradona for a couple of seasons, that'll be grand. And once he's gone, you're like, oh, well, that's one of my favourite players of the era, hung up their boots. But then the fact that you've got all of the actual real life players coming back through, it adds so much more life to that database, because it's names that it's names that you're familiar with, and you're still getting that beautiful hit of nostalgia as you're playing those games. I've said it a million times, they're one of my favourite things to do every single year on Football Manager, are on Mad's retro databases. Now with Mr. Tini's input in that, it gives you the opportunity to just play and play and play and play. And you can go for season after season after season, and what you haven't got is your phenomenal strike force. You haven't got, Fernando Morientes, sat alongside David Hurst, sat alongside Eric Cantona, with just then 3 random new gens that nobody's heard of, it like just kind of bulking out, because I'm never going to play them. As long as Eric Cantona can run, he is starting every fixture for me. I don't care how much potential this new gen's got. He's got 200 CAP. No, I'm not asked, because he's not a real human being. And that's what that adds. It adds that new dynamic to those saves, and it gives you that longevity, which I think, if I'm honest with you both, the saves deserve. I think that's the biggest thing. Because of the effort that goes into it, people now have the opportunity to take those saves and play them for multiple seasons, and not lose the feeling of why they're playing those saves in the first place, which is that wonderful nostalgia. And it's seeing the progression of those players and getting to experience that longer term, also being supported by newer players as they're coming through the clubs. I think it's an absolutely incredible thing. Big fan. No, anytime. I mean, it must be nice. I mean, I especially for Mr. Tini, I like you say, you feel like it's a special thing to be able to work with Mad, and it must be a nice thing to know that the respect is reciprocated, but also the work that you're putting into this is adding so much more. It must be satisfying for you as a database creator, as a content creator in general. That must be a really, really, really nice feeling.
Oh yeah, so especially when you're getting tweets saying, "Oh, this person's just come through my save. I'm really excited to play with this player," and they're about 15 years in. It's so nice to see things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
And
the longevity they get with that, it's mad.
And we understand each other's headaches.
Yeah, that's certainly.
Well, I was going to ask, how did you two actually meet and come to start working together? Because obviously you do your own. You've obviously been doing it a while by yourselves anyway. But when did the convergence happen? When was the team up?
There was actually some negativity to start with because I was working with a guy called the FM Retro Gamer. It was about 5 years ago. Who tend to not to be a very nice person. We'll leave it at that. But that's how I knew Madfra. I knew him through him. Mm-hmm. And then I just approached Mad saying, look, I do this. Is this something you'd be interested in linking up with? And we just went from there, basically.
Amazing. And Mad, how was that for you as somebody, like I say, you'd flown solo and it had been all you for so many cycles and for so many databases to have somebody offering to come in and team up almost? You know, how was that? How did you approach that from going just to say lone maverick, a lone wolf, a soldier of fortune, to suddenly having people behind you?
Yeah, because I actually still prefer to work on my own because it is a mad thing I'm doing. As I say, seriously, it is an obsession. If I'm not editing for one day, I'm getting shakes. I'm getting the shakes. I can't do without it. So, and over the years, way before Tini came about as well, a lot of people have offered me to do some work for me or work on my team or do some stuff on my databases. And I politely said thanks, but no thanks to everyone because, as I say, I do prefer the editing phase, doing it all, even though it takes a long time. But at the time Tini came around with the regen mod, I checked out his work, obviously, and I was incredible impressed about the work, obviously. And then we have spoken back and forward over the time. And at the 94-95 database, which we made last time here for FM24, is, as we said, it's the first project where we really worked together. Over the last couple of years. We've talked about do you make a regen mod for one of my databases and so on. But it's still kind of recent that we work together. And as I said, I've been against, it sounds weird, but I've been against working with anyone over the years. And what Tini was talking about with that guy back in the day, that guy tried to steal some of my work and take credit for some of my work. So I maybe been a little bit, I don't want anyone to get close to what I'm doing. But working on the 94 database with Mr. Tini, it's been a blessing, absolute blessing, game changer. I don't know what other words I can say to it.
I think the beauty of it is we do very different things.
Exactly.
So Mad does obviously the players, editing the players, but as Mad alluded to before, I do the advanced rule stuff. So it is completely different. So we kind of don't tread on each other's toes as much as other creators would if they worked with Mad. I think that probably helps quite a lot. I'm assuming, Mad.
Definitely. That's definitely part of it. Absolutely, we're bringing different strengths, editing strengths to the board, and it works perfect together.
Oh, amazing! I mean, my mind when you were describing those circumstances, and I can see where you're coming from, Mad. You're very protective over your work, and you can understand why there may be a reluctance to reach out and start working with other people. I can get where you're coming from. But then, it's happened and it's all working. For some reason, I just can't get a Willy Wonka and the Oompa Loompas analogy out of my head. So, Tini, how often are you messaging Mad going, Oompa Loompa Dumpety Database? And does he make you wear orange face paint and dance for him? Because if he does, that's fine. I'm in. I think there's no shame in it.
That's only once a month.
Oh, okay. Well, that makes sense. Well, yeah, again, if it's daily, it starts to get a bit weird. But, make it a nice little treat for everybody, isn't it? Yeah. No, see, that's lovely. It's really, really... And, again, it's just nice to hear because it's just collaborative efforts. It's one of those things that I think gets... Again, we talk about, collaborations on the podcast a lot and how beneficial it can be. And it's just really, really nice to hear that it's one that's been... mutually beneficial, and it works. It clearly, just sitting here listening to the two of you interact with each other, it feels very natural. It feels very, very nice, and that helps tremendously. I mean, in terms of what you're up to at the moment. So, for example, Mad, with your 86, 87. 96, 97. I'm skipping decades in my head. With your 86, 87, in terms of the resources, in terms of how that's going, I know, Mad, you said it's comparatively early doors. What's I suppose, in terms of your side of things, Mad, when it's coming to, the source material, the attributes, putting all that together, have you got source material that you're working to, or is it just a little bit of educated guesses on everybody's parts?
Yeah, it's a question I get a lot these days after announcing that I'm doing an 80s database. As you know, for all my other databases, the 0708 database, I get all the information from FM08, copy, paste. 90s databases, I get as much as I can for the old Championship Manager games. An 80s database, yes, there were management games on for the Amiga and stuff like that back in the day, but there was no information I can use like that. So by now, I have my own references. As I have a 1992 database, I have a 1985 database that I made for FM18, so I can use some of them because I've already gathered a lot of information, player heights, all kind of details that I already have in previous versions of the pregame editor for those databases, obviously. So I do have some reference to go to, but also at the same time, I do a lot of research because I try to stay as unbiased as possible. Even when I release an 0708 database, I get DMs from people who say, you are obviously a Liverpool supporter. You're obviously a Man United supporter. Why have you given him these attributes? And I always respond, it's the Sports Interactive evaluations of the players. I can't take the credit or the blame, but I can on the 80s database. So I'm doing a lot of research. I'm reading articles, watching TV clips, videos from old football archives, doing my best to judge each and every attribute for the players as best as possible. And I'm a football historical nerd, so I really enjoy stumbling upon some interesting stories, some weird stories, and all that on the way, learning while building the database. I really love it, I just can't stop when I first get started. Yesterday, if I can tell a quick anecdote. I stumbled upon a story about an English striker in the 80s who's called Billy Whitehurst. And the first article I read about Billy Whitehurst the headline was the most brutal striker in English football ever. So I thought I gotta watch some clips here and see what's up with this lad. And he was described like Vinnie Jones and Duncan Ferguson morphed into one person, and I saw some crazy highlights. So there's some characters from the past like that I gotta learn about, and that's a fun part. That's a given. Fun. Aggression and dirtiness.
Just aggression, yes. just all of it. All of it. In terms of creating those databases, I mean, like as you said there, Mad, you football historian, self-proclaimed football nerd, wonderful thing to be, incredible thing to be. If you were to compare then creating this database to something like 0708, like, as you say, from that game you're just pulling the data from the older versions of FM. Which do you enjoy more as a database creator? Is it going down those rabbit holes of research, or is it just nice to have that source material there? Because there are going to be some players, like for example, I'm looking at one of your tweets from a few weeks ago about some of the hot prospects coming out of Italy. Because you've got that, got a lad, young left back who can also play as a centre back, Paolo Maldini. If memory serves, he became quite a decent footballer as time went on. I think people seem to have a fairly high opinion of him and his career. So that's lovely. But then you're also, as you touched upon there, you've got players who you're like, right, you've got to dive right down into the depths. You know nothing about these players, and you've just got to do that research. Is that more your speed, or is it sometimes nicer to just have that source material, like an older version of FM or Championship Manager there, where you can get most of that information yourself?
It's somehow like a two-headed spear or sword or something like that, because the base editing phase from copying from one game to another, I do enjoy that as much as I do really enjoy making an 0708 database. It's just copying paste stuff, but I do enjoy that grind, and that's part of both scenarios. But I should say the extra research for an older database like that definitely adds something special to it for me as I want to learn more about the past. And some of the players you mentioned, as Paolo Maldini, Roberto Baggio, Paul Gascoigne, who's like mid-20s in the 94 database. They're like teenagers on this 80s database. So it's so much fun to delve into history and see where they were at that point of time in history in their careers.
Beautiful head of hair as well, has to be
Oh,
said.
yeah.
You were showing it off on stream the other day. My word.
Let me tell you, I'm working on a face pack for that 80s database. That's the most fun part of it all. The mullets, the mustaches, the mohawks. It's just that 80s vibe. If you go and watch an 80s music video on YouTube, that's the vibe we're going for in this face pack. It is brilliant. I love it.
They do age people. I will say this now. They age people, like, and I don't know if it's just because it's a generational thing. It's like when you see clips of like, oh, here's footage from a high school in New York from like 1989. Everybody in it, they look like they're 47, and I think it's just oh, that's how my dad used to dress. And it's the same thing. Like, I'm looking at, I've got it up on your Twitter at the moment, Matt. I'm looking at that photo of that 19-year-old Paul Gascoigne. Nah, mate, he's 34. He's got 3 kids. Because there's something about that just stunning head of hair that just screams to me, you've got a mortgage, mate. You don't know. Doesn't the baby face doesn't matter. You are a man with the woes of the world upon his shoulders because you've lived a life, my friend. It just, for some reason, I look at that picture, I'm like, no, he's not 18. He's knocking on the door of retirement, surely. But I think
I was going to say, is that one of the things that sort of can, in some ways, hinder making a database, but adds a lot more life into it for your creation? Like having to kind of find the right pictures, or like you say, you're watching a lot of videos. Like, how easily can you just fall down like a YouTube rabbit hole when you start looking at highlights of, and same for you as well, Tini, because obviously you've got to make all the baby versions of a lot of people that are appearing. So then you're like, all right, cool, let's look at who came through in 87, 88. Oh, he looks cool. And then all of a sudden 3 hours have gone and you realize, oh, I haven't actually added any information in here. Oh God, I need to actually write some stuff down. How common is that? Or can you be disciplined?
Very. For me, it's very common. Premier League years is the worst one for me.
Yeah.
I'll always get stuck watching Premier League years. And oh no, I've not done any work for 2 hours. I should probably go on.
It's convincing yourself. I've been watching this for 2 hours. And I am convinced that Paolo Wanchop should have won at least 1 Ballon d'Or. He was unplayable. Look at him. He was unplayable.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, right, we need to talk about his attributes for the next database. It's 20s across the board for everything. The man was a genius. I mean, I've had it, I think myself and Jeb have talked about this before. We hosted I think it was a Path to the Playoffs together. And we did the entire broadcast, just the two of us, and it took about 4.5 hours, and it was swelteringly hot. But in the build-up to that, because we used one of your databases, Matt, I think it was the 92, 93, we spent probably around 4 hours each. We just loaded up the database and just spent at least 4 hours clicking through players. And portions of that were, I remember that name, I'm sure this, and then you just go, and here's a YouTube compilation, and you're like, oh, this is absolutely, I can understand how easy it is to get distracted, because I lose focus very, very easily, weirdly enough, as anybody who's ever been on a podcast with me or ever had a conversation with me will attest to. So the opportunity for me to just sit and trawl through hours and hours and hours of footage of footballers and go, oh, this is fantastic, I would forget within 5 minutes why I was doing it. So again, having the wherewithal to go, right, I need to go back and I need to carry on doing this, I've got stuff to do, like that must take some doing. It's like, right, 5 minutes of YouTube compilations and now back to the database making. That must take some doing.
Has to be quite disciplined, definitely, because we are working on a time schedule if we got to make a database playable at some point of time. But I should say as well, Dan, what was it? You called me professor? I mean, yeah. What Rich is talking about, going down a rabbit hole on YouTube, that's actually what I want for younger people to, when they're playing a 90s database, if they weren't alive, if they come across a player in the database, in the save or whatever, if they can go on YouTube and check out more up on the player like that, that would make me happy. That's when younger people contact me and say they've done that, that's all I want to hear. That's brilliant.
You'll have a little army of people that are all going to keep messaging going, you introduced me to this guy, Faustino Asprilla. I really like him for some reason. He seems fun. And then just, there he is. There he is. Just everybody, you're going to make a new army of followings for him. His cameo is going to go through the roof. He's going to have so many sign-ups.
Yeah, Mad's going to be entitled to a percentage of all Tino Asprilla cameos, right? Because they're mostly coming from you. Have you ever heard? Have you ever heard from like a former professional footballer that might have got a little bit of additional traction from the likes of these databases? Because people love them. One of my favorite things, and it's the only time that I really kind of allow it when I'm streaming, is when I'm streaming the retro databases, and somebody says, "Oh, could you look at Big Duncan Ferguson?" Absolutely, I can. Yes, let's do. How have I not already done this? What about Rude Hullet? Let's find out what Rude's been up to. And it's brilliant. So, and then some of these people, it's like, oh, I'm going to go start these databases, or I'm going to go and start doing some research. And have there ever been players that have been like, suddenly a lot of people have started messaging me about Football Manager, which I didn't know I was part of. What's going on there? Do you ever get those? Have you had those interactions through the database making in the past?
Yeah, I've had a few. Actually, there was a Danish football player who discovered that I was doing these databases, and he contacted some Danish TV station, who then contacted me to ask what the hell I was doing. And the biggest one, actually, I think, is José Luis Chilavert, the goal-scoring goalkeeper. You had him at Sheffield Wednesday, Rich. You know him. Yeah, he retweeted an image from my database of his playing profile. I think that's the closest I've come to any interaction with him.
That's still very cool, though. That is still very
wild.
cool. Because
but then some of my Spanish friends told me that he's a little bit political sketchy, so I don't know if it's good or bad. But I took it as a huge honor.
Yeah.
Kind of positives.
Yeah, just take it at face value for the positives.
It's when you get the one with my attributes aren't good enough. Please improve.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Was I really that good? Yes, you were, Faustino. Just stop messaging me. Just leave me alone. You were the best to ever do it. I've got to say, Dan and I were joking about this when we were talking about planning the episode. Those Parma teams that you put together, I don't know if it's just luck of the draw, because I know that a lot of your database choices are community led, but there does seem to be a bit of a reoccurring theme that more often than not, it seems to be quite a good year for Parma when you're putting these databases together. There have been some absolutely phenomenal Parma sides that you've built.
Not on the 07, 08, and not on this 80s database, but yes, when people voted for the 98, 99 database, and I didn't do anything. I didn't promote that one over someone else. People just voted for the 98, 99 database, and that's the best Parma team in history. I was just leaning back and smiling all night when that won.
Understandably so. First transfer window. Who are we going to sign? Nobody, because we don't need to.
We've got them all.
We've got them all. It's perfect, just the way it is. Just the way it is. Do you get the same level of excitement looking forward to? Because, man, I know once you finish your database and they're live, they're streamed, you get really, really deep into your saves. Is that something that and it's the same for you as well, Teeny, when you're creating your databases, are you looking forward to playing them? Is that more of a motivator, or is it just the sheer love of database creation and just getting to play them afterwards is just a little added extra for you both?
It's a bit of both, really, to be honest, for me. Because I don't tend to play a lot of them. So I'm very, very busy. Like, I'll finish one database and it's, what's the next one going to be? Mm-hmm. So I don't have a lot of time where I'm actually sitting down and playing the game, just playing the game. There's always something going on in the background. Mm-hmm. But it is, especially with, like you say, 94, 95 was one where I was, because that was when I first started watching football. That for me is like, I can't wait to play this. Liverpool have got like the likes of Robbie Fowler, young Robbie Fowler, and for me, Steven Gerrard, Michael Owen, all coming in via the youth intakes as well. It's like it's the perfect year for me, that.
Mm-hmm. And I do remember while working on the 94 database, we spoke to each other every second day, and we actually talked about a lot of save ideas. This team I'm working on, yes, I'm going to do a save with this team. We had a list as long for save ideas for ourselves.
Understandable.
Well, Well, I was going to say that's. I know you've mentioned it a little bit when you've done your streams before as well. But when you're generating the databases and that stuff, do you make a little mental note of like, yeah, that's a team that would be really fun to manage, or at least like build something off, and that could be a fun one. And then a couple of days later or a couple of weeks later, another team comes along. You're like, actually, no, that's the one. Like, do you spot those teams that are like the fun ones to manage as you're going along?
Most certainly, and also just players. Just one championship manager wonder kid. I want to start a save with his team because he's there.
You find that like individual seasons have like their individual team. So for like 07-08, it was Derby, the lowest Premier League points total.
Derby challenge.
94-95 was Blackburn winning the Premier League. So you have your different things like that.
And on the 07-08, actually, one of my favorite stories is Gretna, the Scottish team Gretna, who won promotion to the top flight in Scotland. Like five years in a row, they won promotion all the way up to the top flight. And then they went bankrupt at the end of the 07-08 season, which is kind of heartbreaking, but it's a really, really interesting story. And stories like that are definitely taking a note in the back of my mind. Could be a fun save.
Understandably.
Is there anyone on 86-87?
Oh yes, there is. The world were crazy back then as well. I've just finished Italy, so the Serie A and the Serie B, and the Serie A in Italy back in '86 only had 16 teams in the Serie A, and one of those teams has a point deduction of 9 points. So try to save them in the top flight. And same situation in the Serie B, actually, in Italy in 1986, where Lazio were playing. Talk about a rebuild. Lazio in the Serie B in Italy, also starting with a minus 9 point deduction. I mean, that's crazy stuff.
I don't like this. Every time you mention it, it's small work for me.
Yes, point deductions.
Well, that's a very, very good segue, because we wanted to ask Tini, in terms of that aspect of the game, you talk about things like the points deductions, you talk about competition rules changing, numbers of teams in leagues. I mean, how much work goes into the structuring of the leagues themselves? I mean, how do you go about that aspect of the game?
It was a lot of time, just because the editor is a broken mess, unfortunately. So you'll be editing in England, and the fourth tier in France will suddenly break, even though you've not even touched it. It's a constant battle, I would say. It probably took about a month and a half for 94, 95.
Right.
And for things like the European competitions, you can't do it, so they change as you go along because the editor doesn't allow you to do it. But for anyone who's listening, Mad's dog's attacking him at the moment.
Yeah, Holmes, you've been doing this for an hour. I've not been fed. Sort me out. Come on. I'll dig a hole. I'll dig the deepest hole you've ever seen in your life.
Yeah, so it's just a lot of hard work with the editor, but with the league side of things, once you've done it once, you can kind of transfer them over to other databases because you do it via the XML code. So it makes it a bit easier once you've done it once, but it's a bit of a broken. I'm hoping with the new game, the editor might be a bit more usable, a bit more user-friendly.
And at the same time, from a positive perspective, I know for a fact that Mr. Tini, he learned a lot about the pre-game editor while working on this previous database.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So much.
Well,
especially the financial side of things as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Because a lot of it is hard-coded into the game, things like sponsorships.
Yeah.
So we have to try and find a way to stop that from happening as people were playing the game.
And the frustrating thing is that we both know that it's doable in the editor. But as Tini says, it's so illogical what's going on in there.
Well, I've got to say, to the credit of everybody involved, it's something that always feels accurate when those databases are released. If we look at the most recent databases, you can go and you can pick up a player like Alan Shearer for a reasonable amount of money, and the finances aren't too skewed in that respect. It's a player like Alan Shearer, because FM is FM. I go, well, this is one of the best strikers in the world. He's worth £95 million, surely. But actually, no. The game and the way that you've managed those finances and the way that's reflected within the game itself. Those reasonable transfer bids are accepted. You know, you're still looking at, you know, maybe 10 odd million pounds for young Alan, which I think is worth every penny. He's quite
And
good.
that is
Quite
that
good
is
at football.
so difficult. It is so difficult. Tini, you know all about it. It's so difficult because FM24 is obviously a modern game. The in-game dynamics handle the game like it's still modern wages, modern values. So it's so complicated to manipulate the game to believe we're back in the 90s, right?
And the problem you've got is some people want that, but other people don't. Some people want the modern finances, so you've got to try and find a balance like in the middle somewhere where people are going to be happy.
Yeah, I found that a lot more, especially in the 94, 95. The player values were a lot more accurate of the time. But I think it's just the introduction of agents and that aspect of the game. The wages were a little bit, again, don't get me wrong, still significantly more straightforward than a more modern database. But that was the one thing that I think stood out more, is that, again, because it's the agents are involved and there's that aspect of the game, and they're always going to be driving the values and the, you know, the wages that players are asking for, they're always going to be driving those up. And that's just something that, unless you figure out how to remove agents from the game entirely, which wouldn't be a bad thing, let's be completely honest with you. Because
take notes, Tini.
Yeah.
just get them gone. Yeah, just if you can, yeah, just all of them. Just all of them, not even in the retro database. It's just in the next Football Manager, because my goodness gracious me, just clicking through those same boxes and clicking through the same interactions with agents time after time. I have some interest in this player. These are his demands. That's too much money. He might consider less. Okay, cheers. Great. And it just goes on that forever and ever and ever. But it works. Considering what you guys do and the effort that goes into it, it works seamlessly, which is, again, just credits the effort that you both put into creating these universes. And it's the immersion, and that's what it all falls back into. I think that's what it all comes back around to. It's the nostalgia, it's the immersion. It feels like you are playing an older version of Football Manager or Championship Manager, but up to date and modern and shiny. And that, again, that's just credit to the pair of you and the ridiculously hard work you put in.
Thank you very much. Like, a lot of people I know have been collaborating with other streamers. They've been saying it's like a brand new game, which someone saying that to me and Mad, that's the biggest endorsement we could possibly get, really.
It is, though. It's a brand new lease of life, especially that we've had the delays and then the cancellation. It's like, what am I going to do now? And it's like, there are basically new versions of the game that you can just dive into, and it's almost like it's like like an extremely better version of the, you know, that on the, when you're loading up the game, there is a don't add real players button. It's like it's like the way better version of that, because on that one, when you do that, it's just the same attributes but just different names and maybe different nationalities. On this, it's like, no, these players are actually like proper players. There's some proper players. You can manage Chris Brunt in this database. Yeah, yes, you can. You can manage Paul Robinson and Paul Robinson and Paul Robinson all in the same team. And now you can make it just a team built around people called Paul and Robinson. It's perfect, and that's what everybody should do.
Yes, we've said it before. There's no right or wrong way of playing Football Manager, but if you're signing the Robin Sy. I don't really know what the collective for Robinsons is. They, first of all, there's a rumor that they form like a massive like robot, like the Megazord from Power Rangers. If you get enough of them on the pitch together, imagine that. That'd be fantastic. But yeah, if you're signing any player called Paul with the surname Robinson, you're guaranteed to have an exponentially better time playing Football Manager.
It's like a Paul Robinson Doug trio, is what it is.
Yes,
and it's perfect. Yeah. So what more do you need?
What more do you want? They all share a body under the ground. Like people have questioned, what does Doug Trio look like under the ground? Paul Robinson's is one huge body, 3 heads. It's quite incredible. Makes me very, very happy. I mean, we've touched on kind of the complexities, I suppose, of the editor. Now, this is where I know Dee, obviously your save with Holsworthy has been heavily editor based.
Yeah, in-game
editor,
none
of
the
course.
pre-game stuff.
None of the pre-game stuff. But
I've touched pre-game before and it broke my head, so I ran away from it.
I suppose our question.
Decision.
Yeah, Get it gone. I'm assuming, based on that, the way that you're describing the pre-game editor is the way that I look at the MLS on Football Manager. Just no, don't want to. I don't want to learn. In terms of that pre-game editor, and it's failings isn't the right word, but obviously it's not as comprehensive as you might like it to be. What could SI add to that pre-game editor, or what could be added to it that would make your lives as database creators exponentially easier?
I'd say and feature I want is to be able to turn back the actual game clock.
Okay.
I would love to be able to do that. But just having things work, it sounds very simple.
What would you like them to fix? I'd like them to fix it, please, so it just does its job.
Yeah, essentially. That's we laugh about it, but that is just the way it is because of how broken it is. Unfortunately, it's just because we spend a lot of time trying to fix things we shouldn't have to fix because it shouldn't be broken.
Workarounds, and workarounds.
Yeah.
Because when you tell the pre-game editor, I want you to do this, and it does 3 other things, you have to find a workaround to try to get it to do what you want. So simplifying the editor, I don't know if that's what I want, but first of all, I just want a pre-game editor for the new era of Football Manager.
Like editing the Champions League was an absolute nightmare. Because if you change one thing in the Champions League, you then have to change the Europa League, and then you have to change the Conference League. But for retro databases, there is no Conference League. So you then got to edit everything else to match to the fact that there's no Conference League. It would just be a lot easier if you could just have a button which says, shut off this competition and have it not affect 8 million others.
Yes, definitely.
Like a valve, just
there
we go.
Yeah,
that's not affected anymore. Doesn't work. It's not there. It's gone.
Yeah. Just pull the lever, and then the lights go out at a bunch of European stadiums.
and having it so it doesn't crash after they have so many database changes in it. That would make our lives a hell of a lot easier.
That would be nice. I mean, I work with very basic software on a daily basis that has a tendency to crash multiple times a day, and I find that frustrating, but a lot of that is just recoverable after a certain amount of time. But I can imagine that if you've got something that has the tendency to be quite temperamental, that is that something that's always there in the back of your mind, is like, please don't crash, please don't go down, please don't go down, please don't go down.
Well, that's why I work in the editors, because they're actually less likely to crash.
Oh, okay.
And then I add it to the FM24 one at the end. But when I first started work with MAD, what we came up with is a way that we'll do like one file for one league, another file for another league, and then we'll merge them all together at the end. It just, especially with UMAD, because obviously when you're editing in the actual FM24 editor. If you have too many changes, it'll take a minute to do one change. So every time you're putting an attribute in, you have to wait a minute for the attribute to actually appear.
Ouch. That's goodness gracious me. That doesn't sound like it's for two people that love creating databases. That doesn't sound like a really, really fun way of having to do it. I'll be completely honest with you.
That's what I mean about it's an obsession and an addiction as well in my case.
No, understandably so. I mean, is it the kind of thing that, because I know a lot of creators have that, dialogue with SI. Is it something that you've tried to reach out to them and discuss and be like, hey, this would be a really, really nice thing for you to maybe try and implement? Or do you, as database creators, do you have the lines of communication that some of the kind of content creators have with SI?
I mean, I'm very relatively new to obviously the content creation scene, so I can't really comment, but I know SI are a bit funny when it comes to retro databases just because of things like licensing and things. I know, Mad, you've had some dealings with things like that.
Oh, yes. First of all, I want to say that Sports Interactive has been, in history, they've been good to respond over the SI forums. I've been using the forums a lot back in the day. Not to say that they fix the issue you report, but they listen to you and respond. So much respect for that. But yeah, definitely, it seems like they give us the pre-game editor. so they know people are modding the game, but they can't really support the modders. So, and I have some history with sports attacks as well, so they don't like me very much. But that don't say that it means everyone who's modding for the game. But I definitely don't have any communication with them at all.
Have to be very careful.
There's so many gray zones, gray areas,
Sure.
right?
Yeah, I can appreciate where that's probably coming from. Yeah, I can understand why they would be there. There we go. I'm being as diplomatic as physically possible. Aren't I good?
Good job, Rich.
Thank you very much, Mad. I am FM Database Creation Switzerland. I am very, very neutral.
Yes, and it is therapy, right? It is therapy.
It's the therapy aspect,
Get stuff off your chest.
Yeah, would you like to build a cuckoo clock with me? That's or possibly some form of universal tool that fits in your pocket. That's all I can think of. Stephen Lichtensteiner, he was from Switzerland. There we go. Of all the Swiss players, that's
the one.
That's where I went. Some might say the best one.
Not there.
Xherdan Shaqiri. There we go. We've settled it. It's
Chapuisa.
Chapuisat. Oh, bless RDF with his
Was Zubabula?
yeah.
Yeah.
There we go. See, what we've actually started doing here is what happens when you're streaming one of the Mad Scientist databases, where you just sit around naming old footballers and just go, yes, that is
Fallen
correct.
into the trap.
Yeah, falling into the trap is exactly what
Always
happens. Always happens, and it's absolutely fine. What we would like to know from the two of you, you've both got database. Obviously, Mad, you've got that 86, 87, which you're cooking up. Tina, you've got 17, 18. Are there any teams in those databases that you're either looking forward to playing with, or vice versa, are really, really hoping that people pick up and start saves with once they're released?
You go first, Tini.
Oh, it's a very good question. I'm not even, because I've not put it into the FMT24 editor. It's a very difficult question to answer. Probably Chelsea with Prime Eden Hazard would be one for me. Because there hasn't been really a retro database where he's been in his prime.
It was a great year, great season.
Yeah.
I mean, as I said, those late kind of 2010s. I love Eden Hazard. Absolutely adore him. I'm really, really sad that his career kind of ended the way that it did. That move to Real Madrid was a bit of a damp squib for him, and it just kind of tarnished what was otherwise an exceptionally good career, where he was one of the best, left midfielders, left wingers in world football consistently for a really, really long time. And yeah, getting my hands on Eden Hazard in his prime, I could get involved with that. I can see where the appeal would lie.
Wrexham in the National League before all the money would be nice as well.
Yeah. It's like, lads, have you seen Daredevil? No, that's the wrong one. Deadpool. Damn it. Have you seen Daredevil? That's quite good. Yeah. They're not going to buy us. Don't watch Deadpool, though. It's terrible there.
That's what we need. We need a superhero to take us over. Anyway, over this. Yeah. And then it happens. Would that be something that you'd pre-program in a takeover? Can you do that?
I think you can, but it's very difficult to do. It's not something I've ever had the time to kind of look into, but I think you can do it.
Come on, you've got time now. Go on.
I wish.
Yeah. It's not the logistics of it. It's just spelling Rob McElhenney correctly. That's McElhenney. No, it's gone. It's gone. Mac from It's Always Sunny buys the club. There you go. That's what you need. Danny DeVito buying a rival club. That's the move. That's what we need to see. So Mac buys Wrexham.
Danny DeVito buys someone like Tranmere.
Yeah, Frank and Charlie buy Tranmere. Oh, there we go. Now we're talking. Now, if we're talking if we're talking custom databases, these are the ones I want to see. Mad, what about you? 86, 87. Are there any teams that you are thinking, I really, really hope somebody picks them up and starts a save with them?
So some of the teams in Italy that are already spoken on with the point deductions, I mean, that could be entertaining saves, I'm sure. But speaking about England, for example, I want to say Oxford United is playing in the top flight, right? When did they do that the last time? So I think that could be a fun one. And they actually have John Aldridge, Ray Houghton. They have a couple of good players. So Oxford United could be quite fun, I reckon.
Where's Diego Maradona in '86?
Yeah, he's just won the World Cup, as you know, obviously, and he's playing for Napoli in Italy, where he won the Italian Serie A in the 86-87 season. Quite remarkably, because they had Diego Maradona and maybe 2-3 decent players, and the rest of the team were below mediocre. So it's a story in itself that Napoli won the Scudetto that season in Italy, but it's prime Maradona, won the World Cup, going to win the Serie A that season. Spoiler alert.
I know a team that you don't need to put any effort into. Just don't even bother making the second tier. My team, it's not worth it. Don't even waste your time.
Just got relegated that season, West Brom, from the first division. Yeah, too bad, man.
Just put Derek Statham in as a free, and we'll call it quits.
What league are West Brom in the 17-18? Are they Premier League or Championship?
I think they're Prem. I think that was our. Oh, now you're making me think.
Remember.
I don't like thinking. It's either our last season in the Prem before we went down with Jay Rodriguez and that lot, or it's the season that the season in the Championship where we lost the playoff final against Villa. I can't remember. It's one or the other, but that could be a fun one. And I'd get to manage Chris Brunt again. So everyone's happy.
That's true.
Could you put Chris Brunt in the 86-87? I know it's a little early, but
Regen mod. There
we go.
But I know Rich, he enjoys the old retro databases because Sheffield Wednesday was always in the top division on some of those retro databases I've done.
Yeah, but it's when Sheffield Wednesday were good. Although 17-18 isn't a terrible year to be a Wednesday fan. I think it was the tail end of our kind of, our playoff pushes. I think they'd started to die down a little bit at that stage, but still a fun team. I think for some reason 17-18 screams out to me as the season. I think that we had, it was 9 senior strikers at the club, and I think 2 centre backs. It was like, just score some goals. just score some goals. It was like we had the Steve
for the Octo track.
Perfect for the Octo track.
Full throttle.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Either of those. When you've got the likes of Stephen Fletcher, Big Dave Nuiu,
Steve Fletcher.
Exactly. Super Gary Hooper, and you've also got 2 centre-backs. That's fine. You don't need to worry. Midfield, we've got Barry Bannon. Barry Bannon can do midfield things, and everyone else just plays up top, and it's going to be absolutely fine.
It's about balance.
It's all about balance. It didn't, spoiler alert, it didn't work out fine. It actually got considerably worse not long afterwards. But it was at that point, I feel like it was Carlos Carvajal's last season, and that was a fun time to be around because he was bonkers. But yeah, either of those will be fine. Obviously, I'll get to live my Chris Waddle dreams as well with the.
Where's Colin Palmer in '86?
I think he's at West Brom.
Yeah.
I think he plays for West Brom. I'm going to the internet and I'm going to look it up.
It's the early days.
We've lost
time
for about 3 hours now.
Yeah.
Yes. Carlton Palmer plays for West Brom in the 86. Okay, Matt, I changed my mind. We need that second tier, please. I need Derek Statham and Carlton Palmer and the other guys, whoever they are. The rest of them, whatever the...
One player to build around.
That's all you need. They did call Carlton Palmer the West Midlands Maradona because he is the man that you can build an entire club around. I reckon if you put West Brom or Carlton Palmer in that Serie A season, I think they're challenge because all you need is Carlton. All you need is Carlton, and that's one of the things that I love because Carlton Palmer, because he's such a cult hero with FMT, just because, and it all spawned from a ridiculous cameo that Jeb bought me, bless him. He's become a cult hero, and I think he's one of those players that when you play the retro databases, and I've definitely talked about this before on stream. I think we've mentioned it before on pod. When it comes to player attributes in those retro databases, the further back they go, the less middle ground there is. It's like, how's his heading? Well, it's either world class or it's terrible. There's no middle ground there.
2001.
Exactly, and that's Carlton. I think, especially in the most recent, his attributes are all either world class or they are absolute rice water. Like, I think his technique is 2, maybe 3, but then his work rate is 19 or 20. It's phenomenal. And for me, that just perfectly summarizes who Carlton Palmer was as a player and was as a person. Dee and I were talking last week. You know, for some reason, just listening to people talking about Nigel Clough. More often than that, listening to Mark Crossley doing Cloughie impressions is fantastic. But Mark Crossley's also recently started telling anecdotes about Carlton Palmer, and I nearly shared one in the FMT group chat at about 2 o'clock in the morning on Thursday, and I couldn't sleep, and they all started coming up. And it's just stories about him turning up for pre-season games, just completely off his nut, and trying to, you know, it's like Mark Crossley. He's going up to Mark Crossley and saying, "Are my eyes straight?" Because I'm not sure if they are. They're like, "No, mate, they're all over the place." It's like, "Oh, I'm still half cut from the night before." And there's like balls going over his head, and they're conceding goals in these pre-season games. And like Mark Crossley's getting furious because he's being made to look silly because he's conceding all his goals pre-season. And he just keeps looking at Carlton Palmer, and Carlton Palmer just keeps turning and go, "All right," because he's just absolutely hammered from the night before. Carlton Palmer deserves 20s or 1s in his attributes. Like, he is the epitome of a player that actually this era of football and the way that you structure their attributes works perfectly, because it's who he was as a person. No middle ground, no surrender.
Well, that's something you could add as an injury. You know, players have been out the night before, because that would have been very typical of the we went to the pub, but before training and after the game, it was fine. And yeah, just players, just their injury is they're just hungover. It's a really bad one. It's a really big
it's
big
actually
hangover.
already in the game somehow. In one of my saves on Twitch, I had a player who was absent for training, seen him leave a nightclub like 20 times per season.
I remember this.
Yeah.
So, Latty Jr.
Yeah, by coincidence, we built the most controversial player character on FM, I think. I don't know how.
Oh, that'd be fantastic. And again, you can. That's what when the sports scientists come to you, they're like, right, you can either send him you can give him injections getting through the game, you can send him to the physio who'll be out for 3 days, or just give him a Barocca and just see what happens. he'll be reaped by half time. Just pop him on the bench and he'll be okay. Hair of the dog, he'll be absolutely golden.
Just give him another tinny. He'll be fine.
Yeah.
There you go. Enjoy that. You'll be fine. Have that down you. Half time he'll be cooking.
Exactly. There's a headline from around the early 90s. Sheffield Wednesday legend David Hurst. It's like drinks 2 bottles of champagne on Christmas Day, plays Boxing Day, ends up in goal, breaks his fingers, and saved a penalty or something ridiculous like that. It's like, that's what they did back then. There was no sports science. Treadmills at a football club. How dare you? How dare you? Violently hungover world beaters. That's what you need to base a team around. Oh, I suppose one of our, as we start to kind of, wrap our conversation up, because we've been talking for ages and it feels like we've been talking for 5 minutes, which is the hallmark of a good podcast. In terms of eras that you've both made, are there any that you haven't dived into there? Are there any specific seasons that stick out in your head that either of you would love to make a database for that it hasn't cropped up as yet? What's not been done by Mr. Tini and Mad Scientist that you would love to do?
I think the main one everyone's asking for is 0910.
Mm-hmm.
That sort of... It's because we've got 13-14, we've got 07 and 08. We've just got nothing kind of in the middle of those two.
Mm-hmm. Which I think is fair. Great year. I think FM09 was the first one I had on a PC or a laptop that I actually owned, and that was a game changer for me. I played a lot I played console versions, I played at friends' houses, but I was very late to the owning a laptop party, and FM09 was the one that I sunk a hideous amount of hours into. So I'd be very, very happy with anything from around that kind of era, young Eden Hazard, young Romelu Lukaku, like those are the ones that really, really young. I think it might be slightly too early for Kuma Babkar, who came through at Fiorentina. He was like giant Senegalese striker, and he just was phenomenal in every single save you signed. You could sign him for a pittance, and he scored millions and millions of goals. One of those players who his career would always end with, he'd have 150 appearances for the national team, but like 210 goals. Absolute world beater.
And he was good from when he was 16 years old or something. You could pick him up.
Straight into your first team. Yeah, no messing, no loans, no spend a couple of years in the reserves. No, first team, off your trot. That's what that glory days.
But
So-
actually, to answer your question as well about the database, I think this 80s database, I've chosen that season myself because when I do those votings on social media where people can vote for what season I should do next, the 90s and the 2000s and 2010s have a way wider audience, obviously. But there's that old school community who's been screaming for an 80s database or even older database for years, and it will never win any of my voting polls. So that's also a reason why I chose to do it. I think if it should ever be, it should be now, right, when we're still on FM24.
Yeah, one for you. You know, you make the ones that are, you know, obviously a lot of people are enjoying the ones you've made, and people will obviously enjoy this one as well. But this one's for you. You get to enjoy the 80s ones. I've said to you before, I'd really love at some point, it would be great to get a 70s one, because West Brom were really good in the 70s, as I've been told far too many times about how rubbish we are now in comparison. And we, you know, get the likes of Laurie Cunningham, Tony Bomber Brown, Cyril Regis, all those names. Be fun at some point. But in your own time, you know, you got 86, 87 to make first, Mad. I'm not going to, you know, have to rush it, but make it happen, yeah.
Gotcha.
For me, the end goal is to one day have it so there's a database for every like 3 or 4 years span.
Yeah.
So you can have the 13, 14, 09, 10 once it's obviously been done. 06, 07, 01. So people have got like a choice of where they can go.
And even better if we can bring all those databases to the same version of FM, so people really have a catalog to choose between. That would be an ideal dream scenario.
That's what we're hoping for from the new game editor, that we are able to transfer them across.
Well, we've been able to do it between the last, 23 to 24. You could move the save file forward. So you'd hope that something along those lines will at least continue as well. So you can at least be like, here's a starting save file. It starts right at the beginning of 98.99. Go have some fun.
Like a lot of the work I do on my Patreon is bringing previous FM's databases over. So I've got a version of 01, 02 on there and things like that. So eventually we want to have a program where you can just select which one you want, press a button, and it'll install it all for you. And just have that, obviously, the sequence gap. But obviously, that's a big pipe dream, especially with the current state of the game.
Dreams are good. Dreams are important. That would be quite incredible, wouldn't it? That'd be quite incredible. I mean, if you got 0102, has To Madeira made his way into that database?
Yep, he's there.
Lovely stuff. Have you ever been...
Samba?
Oh, now we're talking.
Marker.
Oh, my goodness gracious me! Here's a fun thing. Here's an exciting look behind the podcast curtain. The podcast was originally, one of the names that Matt and Tony floated was Mark Curb Your Enthusiasm, and that was going to be the name of the entire. I think it ended up being an episode title at one point, but that was I think that was floated, and I was like, I love it, but even by my standards, I think it's a little bit too niche. And they're like, okay, fine. Back to the drawing board then. But yeah, the absolute. Is that something that have you ever thought about doing that? Maybe just, you know how you've got, your name in the game, that kind of thing. Just chuck a, Tininho or something, some kind of, Brazilian wonder kid that nobody's ever heard of. He's come through at Santos and he looks like an absolute world beater, but there's no record of him anywhere. Just.
Funny you should say that, actually. In the region mod as it is now, there are Easter eggs.
Oh.
So I'm in it, Mad's in it, and various other creators are actually in it already.
Amazing.
Fun.
There you go. That's very, very cool.
It's like my way of stopping people from kind of plagiarizing my work. Yeah. So if another region mod came out and it had me in it, I'd be like, well, why am I in it?
Because you're great. That's why. Of course.
If anyone who's ever watched me play football knows I'm not great at football.
No. See, the first Dan
will get to see this next month when we go to Denmark.
Nice. I've always said the first 10 yards of ability are always in your head. Like I'm on my day up here. I'm a world beater. Honestly, just absolute maestro.
I was Brexit centre back, C ball, hoofball, other end of the pitch.
No nonsense centre back. If I was a centre back, I'd be an occasional nonsense centre back. But just it's important to play to your strengths, isn't it? It's important to play to your strengths.
You've got me in the wrong position for Holsworthy.
This is the wheel. What do you want, man?
The wheel has spoken. The wheel has spoken, and I'm now a goal scorer for Holsworthy.
Oh, what a goal it was as well.
That was an absolute treat for me. The amount of people that sent me that clip. I was sat in a pub with my wife yesterday afternoon. My phone just started buzzing. I was like, either somebody's died or something good has happened. There's no middle ground. Again, see, Matt, it's like the retro database. It's either a 1 or a 20 in terms of the news that I'm about to get. I'm like, oh. I've even told my wife, I was like, I've just scored a goal for Holsworthy Albion. She went, no, you haven't. You've been sat here with me. I was like, no, it's on a... I was going to go back to my burger. It was great. So, yeah, the world's my oyster. Finally, the world is seeing what I'm capable of in that central midfield role. Yeah, absolutely. And long will they continue to do so. Fellas, we've been chatting for a fair old while now, and it very much feels to me that, on the one hand, I could quite happily sit here and talk to everybody for another couple of hours, but I'm also aware of the length of, a respectable length of a podcast. So, to me, this very much feels like the end of one. I don't know how the three of you feel, but that very much feels like a podcast to me.
To be fair, these lads have got to get off and they've got to build
databases to build. Yeah, come on, they've got come on.
That's it. Matt's got to get working on that baggies team now because we found out part of the place for him.
Exactly. Start him immediately. 20s and 1s. The Carlton.
I need to start work on the Rich Owens region.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do. Yes, you do. The chair does me no justice. I'm 6'5", just in case. People, I'm a short 6 foot in reality because I am. I'm a short 6 foot. I'm 6 feet tall with 30-inch legs. I shouldn't exist. I'm torso heavy. But yeah, actually, I'm 6'5", so just bear that in mind, Teeny, Mad. Before we wrap up, if people want to check out the incredible work that you've done, they want to check out your databases. I know there was mention of Patreons. Mr. Teeny, let's start with you. Where can people access the incredible work that you do? And if they wanted to support you, how can they do so?
So I'm MrTini23 everywhere you can find. So Patreon, just search MrTini23 and you'll find me.
Super duper. Mad, people want to do the exact same thing for you and experience the wonderful work you do. Where can they do so?
I have a website actually where there's links to all my previous database releases and to my Patreon as well as stuff. So head over to my website, take a look at it all.
There will be a link to said website in the description of the podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, just have a little scroll down through the information at the bottom. It's in there. Click on it. Click on it now, and then comment and tell us that you've done it. And if you don't comment, I won't believe you. There we go.
Send us some save stories as well.
Send us some save stories. If you've played any of Mad or Teeny's databases and had a wonderful time doing so, which of course you have, it's physically impossible to not enjoy yourself when you're playing the retro databases. It can't be done. You can't have a bad time. Tell us all about it, because that is one of the nicest experiences. For me, as a content creator, there's nothing that makes me happier when somebody's like, oh, I was watching your stream the other day and I saw you playing Mad's Retro Database. I've downloaded it. I'm now managing Arsenal. Tell us all about it, because it's amazing. It's sharing stories about FM is always really, really cool. And especially these retro databases makes it even nicer. D, people might want to watch you doing things this week. How can they do that?
Well, if you want to be hypnotized by spinning wheels and watch a fictional team climb up the leagues, you can come over to twitch.tv/dboyplays. Come check out Holes with the Albion, which everyone on screen apart from myself is part of the team.
Yeah, we are.
And I'm spinning wheels.
You're the puppet master. That's what we
There
call
he
you.
is.
Oh, he's getting ready.
There he is. He's got the
Why does that look?
There you go.
Why does that look like the biggest goalkeeper glove you've ever seen?
It's a regular size. It's just really, really close up.
Back in the
is
day
weird.
would be the big foam hands that you'd wear at like sporting events. That's what they use for goalie gloves.
On cue.
Of course, he's got one.
We don't sleep.
It's accurate. accurate. Incredibly accurate.
What about you, Rich? What do people want to watch you? Where can they come hang out?
Goodness me. Me and my regular size hands. Twitch.tv/Rich Owens FM. Come check me out. Playing games that, weirdly enough, after last week aren't FM. I played Thank Goodness You're Here. And my goodness gracious me, what a good time everybody had. Me, the most. I enjoyed it the most. So yeah, come hang out. We do streams. We do all sorts of things. And obviously, because they're not here, our wonderful friends, twitch.tv/Jebbaroo and twitch.tv/The Steak Bake. Is it his Twitch that has the underscores, or is it
the underscore steak?
The underscore bake. Thank you. Yes, I always
Everything
get
else
confused
for him is the steak bake, though.
I always confuse his Twitch and his Twitter because I'm a bad friend. Sorry, Steakity. We love you. Twitch.tv/the_steak_bake. Do all of those things. Mad Teeny, it has been a genuine pleasure to catch up with you both. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Appreciate you both enormously.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us. Appreciate it.
Anytime. And this will not be the last time either. Dee, thank you for organising this. This has been an absolute delight.
Pleasure.
Nothing
anytime I get to spend with these, anytime I get to chat with these lads, I love. So it's perfect.
That's it. So thank you all, and thank you, the audience, for listening, for watching. However you are consuming this podcast, we appreciate you enormously. Drop us a little sub. Go on, drop a little sub on YouTube. Do it now. Drop a little thumbs up. Leave a little comment. Tell a friend. They'll tell a friend. They'll tell a friend. It goes on like that forever. And suddenly we're massive. This has been another episode of Football Manager Therapy. We will catch you on the next one. Until then, take care. We love you lots. Bye-bye.